Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to Jam the Hype Live, where we help Christian urban artists effectively influence our modern culture to live lives transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. My name is George Moss. I am your host for Jam the Hype Live, joined by my co-host, creative director for Urban Youth Workers Institute. What up, Cherie?
What is up? You look so skinny. Anybody else seeing this out there in the internet lands? Tell us about that juice fast you were on for a minute.
It was a juice like cleanse. I've been doing this thing to just kind of cleanse my body, toxins out of my body and things like that. Luckily, it's over. It was over on Sunday of this week, so I can actually eat food during the day now. But man, it was rough. Like, you actually get my wife is studying natural medicine, and she's a naturopath, and like so.
So you're her guinea pig?
I'm her guinea pig in a lot of things, and I mean, it works. But it's like when you get all those toxins out, like you get. Like, your tongue is all white all the time. It's just toxins coming out. So, but I feel great though.
Good.
I feel great.
Very good. Well, I'm doing well as I'm doing good as well. Me and my husband went to Laguna Beach. You know, I'm a beach lover. So went this weekend. It was awesome. And I have made peace with the ocean. So last time I got into the ocean before the summer, I got caught in a riptide and got totally banged up. So I was really afraid of swimming. But I have studied the water. I feel confident again. I've been swimming twice, and it's been amazing because that's really therapeutic for me.
You got in touch with that inner Moana.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Man, I'm excited about this topic that we got going on today, and I'm actually excited about this process. I feel like there's just this time for renewal in a lot of different ways. Of course, to me, with this juicing thing that I was trying to do, like, just a lot of different areas of my life. And this one in particular, just getting back into this creative mindset, because with this pandemic that has gone on, sickness that's happening, I really feel like it's just kind of squelched a lot of the creativity that I've been able to have. And last week, we introduced this topic of the artist's way and recovering a sense of safety, and kind of talking about the morning pages. That was one of the exercises that was recommended that you do, which is getting up in the morning, first thing in the morning, and writing 3 pages, just allowing your pen to move across the page. It doesn't matter what comes out. And it was super freeing to be able to know that I can just write anything. And sometimes we get so caught up in our brains of thinking that we don't actually get it out on the page. So I was practicing that this week, and no lie, it's tough to have something brand new introduced into your morning routine. So I can't say I'm perfect 7 days straight, but I did get a few days in where I'm starting to get into this habit of getting up and just writing. But I'm realizing it takes me a lot longer than an hour just to write 3 full pages. So I'm just not used to writing. I'm used to just typing, but there's something therapeutic about actually writing and getting a little cramp in your fingers.
Agree.
Yeah. But it was cool to be able to recover that sort of sense of safety, just being able to know that I can express and that I don't got to think about it. No one's going to see about it. But I'm excited to talk about this one, is this idea of recovering a sense of identity. And the identity is one of those things we've talked about in the past episodes. And that's one thing that always continues to come up, by knowing uniquely who we are and how we define ourselves as God created us. And I posted this thing on our Instagram last week. I found this quote by Lecrae, and it's such a dope quote, where it says, "Success isn't what you've done compared to others. Success is what you've done compared to what you were made to do." And once we sit down and are able to analyze what we're made to do, not only do we have the sense of safety and security of being able to know that God has called us to do this, we can know who we are and have the freedom to be who we are once we sit down and do that. So as we express in the morning pages and being able to go through this second chapter, I love some of the things that they talked about, of like recovering who we are uniquely. What was your experience like as you were kind of going through this?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just been very therapeutic to write out my thoughts. I've got so much in my brain and it exhausts me. So to be able to write it on paper, I know every morning when I show up to this book that the thoughts that I have are out on paper, and I can see them and I can get to them when it's scheduled. For me, it's about scheduling and making space for my own creative process, my own thoughts, for my own self. And so I haven't journaled in a long time. I used to journal all the time when I was younger. But now I'm like, this is awesome. Why did I stop doing this? I think it's the digital age. I mean, our journal is now our Instagram feeds, right? It's our Facebook stories and all these things. But it's not the same as writing it out and being able to have it in a place that's your kind of like your sacred space. That's what it's become for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about a lot of those different things, and I'm noticing myself as I've read through this, and I'm already becoming a lot more aware of my creativity. But one of the first sections of this book that he talks about is talking about going sane. Now, it's funny because like we always talk about going insane, but sometimes it says it's important to remember that when you that at first flush, going sane feels a lot like going crazy, and it's kind of getting back to who you actually are. It feels like, I don't know, we've spent so much time, especially on social media, trying to be the best version of ourselves rather than being ourselves. And as we're going through this process of identifying who we are, it is interesting to kind of rediscover our actual thoughts and who we actually are. I don't know. It does feel a little bit like, a little chaotic, a little bit. Just to kind of think of all these brain thoughts that are going on in my head and actually getting them down onto the page. What's, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I feel you. One of the things that it said in the chapter about rediscovering a sense of identity is that we need to stop fantasizing and do the work. And again, to me, this is about getting out of our heads and actually putting your pen to the paper, your hand to the work, and doing it. And it also talks about there's a danger for artists that are in their head all the time, that we have these self-delusions. We're people who talk a lot about all the things we're going to do and all the things we're going to create, but we do nothing. I know I've done that, and I have a lot of artist friends that are so creative, and they always have a project going on, but it's been 7 years and I've never seen one project. So...
You talking about me?
But they really but they really believe that they have these projects. And I'm like, I'm starting to wonder, are you insane? Like, what's this world you live in? And it's our heads.
And it is, because I think the more that we talk about what we do, when you say what you're going to do and you put that out there, you almost get that sense of gratification if it's just already done. And when you just are silent and don't say anything, you just actually pursue it and do it. It produces this drive in you to actually get it done, to have something to show to the world. But that is the thing, that is the biggest problem that I know I face, is overthinking. I love that what she says in here is like, just as a recovering alcoholic must avoid the first drink, the recovering artist must avoid thinking or avoid the first think. Like, because that's the first thing that stops, because you can be writing something and all of a sudden you start thinking about how this is going to be received, or how this is going to be understood by somebody else. And then all of a sudden that little bitty seed just takes you off into some wonderland where it's like you're there for the next 30, 40 minutes, an hour, and you haven't written anything else because you spent all your time just thinking about that. So this idea of going sane is like just be who you are and just say what you have to say. And I think the morning pages is a great practice to be able to do something like that. I can't wait until I can actually implement that when I got the track on and I just go.
Yes.
But I think building that muscle is going to be super super interesting to see how it actually plays out. The next thing that I thought was really cool about this is it's going back to the first chapter where she explains the creativity. Your inner artist is like a child, and that child needs to be nurtured and protected. And you're able to allow that child to grow by building confidence in that child, not like critiquing him and criticizing that child all the time. And when you start to think about your inner artist as that child, I start to think about it as my children. And I have a little 5-year-old boy, and my 5-year-old, he loves to play with everybody and anybody. But no lie, there's some kids that play at the park behind my house. I'm like, yo, we ain't dealing with them. Like, you because you know that you don't want your children to be around people that are going to influence them negatively, are either going to bully them, that are going to talk bad about them, that are going to leave them out, that are going to do something that makes them feel shame or less than. And just the same way that we don't want our actual children to play with playmates that are, quote unquote, poisonous, we have to do that ourselves as artists. And I've never really thought about it that way. Have you ever experienced, I don't know, what was your take on something like that?
Yeah, the poisonous playmates section of this chapter was amazing. Talking about our creativity being blocked by people who have plans for us. So you can have a plan. You're like, okay, I want this song to be like this, or I want this, video to be like this. I want whatever. And then you allow these basically playmates is what she calls them, but they're collaborators, they're creators, co-creators, and they just take it off into a whole direction that just does not serve the art well. And so that makes you become blocked, and then you start doing something just out of obligation rather than out of joy. So I've definitely had that happen before, but I loved how she reframed it, and she said it's our responsibility to ourselves to create art. So I think oftentimes when we're in that blocked period, we want to, again, offload the responsibility of creating art by inviting a collaborator. And it's really just saying, hey, you do this for me. And then that's what they do. So it's kind of our fault anyway. If you have a vision, lead your vision. If you have a piece of art you want to do it. If you bring in a collaborator, they're following your vision.
And I think that's one of the things I felt so difficult about actually creating with other people, because I feel like it always blocks me. And I feel it makes me overthink so much, because if they do have an idea, you kind of get this like, man, I don't want to use that idea because I didn't come up with that idea.
Ooh, that's an interesting perspective.
And I've been in co-writing sessions myself. For me, I'm kind of lazy. So if you have an idea, I'm going to use it. I'm like, yo, let's do that.
Yeah.
But I know that for me, I've been in co-writing sessions and things like that. And I feel like sometimes you get in the room with certain people and like, you want to say something and you have this idea and that like, that's dope. But like, they really don't want you to do, they didn't come up with it. So they don't really want to use it. And it's kind of, I don't know, you have to find the right people to collaborate with that are going to be, now it's going to be, there's one thing to have poisonous playmates, but also there's plenty of positive playmates as well. So collaboration can bring out the best in you as well. Like my best friends that I grew up with, they brought out the best in me. They helped me, they encouraged me, they pushed me, and they helped me to be who I am even better. But there's also those that kind of just, that are, that squelch your dreams. And sometimes I look at this as, especially when you're in the room with people that you admire and that you respect. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you go to school and you want to hang out with the popular kids, you want to hang out with the cool kids table, you sit with them, but you realize that like, yeah, they let you sit at their table, but you're really not in their clique. It's one of those, it's like, you have to protect yourself as an artist to say, look, I am going to create where I'm accepted, where I belong, where I'm valued. And I'm going to create with others that I accept, that belong with me, that I value as well. And there's certain people that you have to kind of judge whether or not you're going to create with them, because not to say that they're bad people, not to say that they're just hating on you or whatever, but there's certain chemistry that you have with certain people. And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we're creating, as we're collaborating.
And that's why I was going to say real quick, that's why I loved having Krista on last week, because she was a safe playmate. She is a safe playmate for me. So collaboration can work. So I want to just be clear when I say they follow your vision. When, for instance, Krista and I would get together and write, we would set an intention. So if it was writing a song for Cherie, then she followed my vision. If it was writing a song to get placed in a film or TV, then it was, we both kind of curated the vision, if that makes sense. But one of the things that this chapter talked about that I think makes Krista a safe playmate is that we both really come from a place of working hard and long for the art, not for our ego. And she talks about that. Are you working hard and long due to your ego or for the sake of the art? And there's a huge delineation between those two things. So that was impactful for me.
Yeah. And speaking of that, the other thing that, man, just gives me goosebumps just thinking about like this chapter, because as an artist, that ego does kind of come into play once we start thinking about the end goal and we start thinking about what it's going to come out to be. But there's one line in there that says, you will discover the joy of practicing your creativity. I can just practicing the creativity, the process, not the product, will become the focus. Like when we focus on just the practice of creating, it's not the end goal to have something finished and created. It's the process of actually creating. And for me as an artist, I've been one of those, like, I just want to get this done. I want to get this out because a lot of things that will come up in way back in the day when I used to have to pay for studio time, like, you're on the clock. You're like, man, I can't create in here. But actually going into the studio is not the place to create. You've already created. Now you're recording what you've created. That's a different space. But at the same time, it's like there's still creative process that goes on there. But in your mind, you're like, man, I'm running up this bill. I'm going to go over budget, that type of thing. So when you have all these different thoughts that are just clouding up your vision, it really kind of it stunts your creative growth. But when you just like, what, I love this idea of practicing the art. I think of other analogies, but I won't say that. But just practicing the art and playing the game. It's not like when I go fishing, I love going fishing. Sometimes it's not about actually catching fish. I'm not going out there because my family needs to eat tonight and I have to catch fish to bring them home. I'm going out there to enjoy myself. And I feel like that's the same process that we need to have when we go into the studio, when we sit down with the track, when we sit down in front of the editing software, or when we sit behind the camera, whatever we're creating. If we're looking at a blank canvas, it's about the creative process, not necessarily the end goal. And when you are around poisonous people that you're playing with, it really stunts you from focusing on just the process rather than instead of focusing on the product, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But speaking of those poisonous playmates, she calls those people crazy makers in this book. And I think we all have these crazy makers in our lives that that just cause just all sorts of chaos in our lives. The crazy makers are those, it says, crazy makers are those personalities that create storm centers. They're often charismatic, frequently charming, highly inventive, and powerfully persuasive. And for the creative person in their vicinity, they are enormously destructive. And I think we all have those people in our lives that kind of, they're the center of attention. Everything is about them. And I don't know, it just rains on your parade. You can't actually feel like you can be who you are and create.
I definitely feel like not only have I had those people in my life, but I feel like I can be that person. I have a lot of ideas. I'm a futurist, so I love looking out into the future. And I think that sometimes I can be a crazy maker. And here's what I need to do to make sure that I'm not a crazy maker. I need to make sure that I have schedules, that I have deliverables, and that I stick to that, and that I have accountability. And so for me, this process hasn't only been about Cherie rediscovering her artistry, but it's also about me becoming a better leader and understanding here are the processes that need to be in place for artists to create at their optimal capacity, because I lead at UIWI a team of artists. So it's easy for me to get super ahead of them and run ahead. In fact, that happened to me a couple weeks ago where I was like, let's brainstorm. And they were like, we haven't landed on the last idea. And I completely freaked them out. So I'm learning that structure is my friend. Time-bound goals are my friend. Measurable goals are my friend. SMART goals, if you don't know what those are, guys, take a look on Google. Look it up. You can see what that means. But SMART goals are your friend as an artist. I know it sounds counterintuitive because you just want to be free, but the morning pages are a good example of have a system in place that you show up to every day around the same time and get it done. Do the work. And then in the end, you'll be way more sane in the process. Come on.
I do love that.
She actually, go ahead.
So like I'm what I'm hearing you saying, and what the picture I hear you say which is a picture of just life in general. Art is beautiful when you have a canvas in front of you, and you can make that canvas be whatever you want it to be, and it can be beautiful. The process can be therapeutic, it could be healing, and it could be amazing to do that. But once you start painting outside of that canvas, and everything else it becomes a dirty mess. It becomes outside of the parameters with which it's supposed to be in. And if you start thinking about it that way, that's how God has created everything. He designed rivers to be powerful and to flow within their banks. But when they flow outside of their banks, they become very destructive. And the same thing happens with us. But you think about that when it comes to just our lives in general, sin. I'm thinking of this idea of sex. When you have sex, when it's inside of the parameters that God created this beautiful expression to be of intimacy between a husband and a wife, God and his church, when it's in the parameters, it's a beautiful thing and it produces good fruit. But when it's outside of the parameter, what it produces is hurt, pain, fatherlessness. It creates so many other destructive and harmful things. So what I realize is that when we have structure in our lives as artists to say, I'm going to create within these parameters. I'm free to be me within these parameters at this time of day. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to enjoy the process because I've set it aside. I've budgeted that time to be in that space for that time. Because in even the process of morning pages of what stops me from being critical is the fact that my morning pages in my first draft, I'm able to be free because I'm saying that's the time where I can say whatever I want to. I give myself time to think about it later. I give myself time to critique it and make it dope before I let a whole bunch of other people. But for right now, at this space, I'm going to give it that parameter and that time. And if we surround ourselves with a bunch of quote unquote crazy makers that says crazy makers break deals and destroy schedules. They expect special treatment. They discount your reality. They spend your time and your money. It says they I forgot that word. I can't even read that because it's all scribbled out.
Are you reading from your journal?
In this book, but it's they have so many different things about, anyway, crazy makers are distractions. We can be that in ourselves if we are allowing it to be that. So one of the things that squelches us.
So she keeps bringing us back to this idea of being sane, insanity. So, survival lies in sanity. Insanity lies in paying attention. Fast forwarding up a few chapters, this is really important for me. It's called pacing. How am I working every day? What are my ways of working? Weekly, what are my rhythms? What am I doing to stay in a state of rest and a state of paying attention to the things around me, not missing the journey while I'm trying to get to the destination. And that actually happened this weekend when my husband was like, let's just go to Seal Beach. He really wanted to go to Laguna Beach, but Seal Beach is 10 minutes away. Laguna Beach is 45 minutes away. And he wanted to just take the quicker route because he's like, hey, it's already 12, let's just take a shortcut. And I said, babe, it's not about, being at the water. You want to go swimming, we can go swimming, until 5:00 tonight. It's really about the journey. Let's take the drive. It's so beautiful. And then I talked him into it. And we were so glad we ended up taking the drive, the 45-minute drive to Laguna Beach. And I feel like I'm going to try to do that more intentionally in my life in the next months because I feel like it's helping me in my artistic process to slow down, pay attention, enjoy the process, understand, yes, the singles will be done. Yes, the songs will be written. But at the end of it, that's not where you get your biggest gratification, though that's great. It really should be gratification throughout the process. And that's something I feel like I lost when I was signed to BEC Tooth and Nail Records. I was running so fast in that process that I really feel like it was a blur. I can't remember certain shows. I can't remember certain host homes we stayed at. I can't remember fun things we did as a band. It would just literally just felt like a revolving day, over and over again. And I grieve that a little bit because that was a dream I dreamed about for ever since I was 7 years old. And for it to be a blur is kind of weird.
Yeah, I think we all have those things. And I think some of those times we that which leads us to the next section in this book that it talks about is skepticism. That we're so afraid of just trusting the process, like trusting the process that we will get to where we have to be. If we're not just so, I feel there's this, we've entered into an era where artists have to also be entrepreneurs. And as an entrepreneur, you have to have this drive. You have to have this destination, this hustle, this get it done mentality, this like knock things out, check things off your list. And there's value. There's a lot of value in that. But what that creates is this hurry and this rush and this skepticism of like, this is a waste of time to do this when I can just take this shortcut here, like you talked about before. And I think when we start to second guess ourselves, that we start to second guess ourselves and we start to second guess God. We start to second guess God to say like, I'm going to do this morning pages. Like, is this actually worth it? I'm not actually getting things done. I'm not actually, making this thing happen. And when we just don't recognize that God has his hand on every step in the process, and we're trying to rush so far to get to the destination, and we end up trying to put the cart before the horse, and then it takes us 10 times longer to get to our destination by just not trusting the process and trusting God in the process. So thinking about as this inner child, so to speak, or this creative child. I know this girl that when she was a baby, she didn't go through the crawling process. She went straight to walking. Like she was on the floor and then she started taking her first step. She just skipped the whole crawling phase. And then at 17 years old, because she didn't go through the crawling phase, her knees were misaligned or messed up in some way. So she had to go in and have surgery where the doctors literally had to go in and break her knees and reformat them just so they could grow properly. And every stage in the process is important. We cannot start out main stage on festivals. You cannot start out riding on tour buses. You cannot start out that way because you're missing the journey along the way. So this idea of skepticism where we're not sure that this is going to work or we're not sure that that's going to work. I think just taking your time to slow down and just trusting the process is vitally important for us as artists that are also trying to be professional as entrepreneurs and produce something as well. Realizing like, you know what? Art is a process. Once you go through the process, let the process take care of itself.
And so for me, my agreement with God right now is, hey, God, I'll show up and provide the quantity. I'll keep showing up. And I believe you're going to provide the quality. You will provide what you want out of this work. So George, what is kind of your intention? What are you talking to God about these days as you're doing this study? What's your hope?
I'm just trying to say, God, just speak through me. Because I feel like all the time, since I overthink things, sometimes you might hear from God. And he was like, God, is that really you? God, you're not really saying that to me. Like, how can I really, really speak to God? But just trusting, knowing that he is speaking. And that's one of the last things that he talks about is just paying attention to God, slowing down enough to be able to hear God speak. Because God doesn't always, he's not in the storm. He's not in the wind and the waves. He's that still small voice that just wants to speak to you. And I remember sometimes when it's at those times where I'm just at peace and I don't feel like I have to get something done, where I really, really understand where God speaks. And I really can see him speak in a lot of situations. So that's where I get all of my illustrations, my analogies, my best songs, is just being able to slow down and pay attention to what's going on around me.
Love it. Well, that's it for this week's study. Next week, we're going to go into recovering a sense of power. I'm excited about that chapter. But if you guys enjoyed what we're talking about, if you're intrigued by this conversation, like, subscribe, and comment. Love to have you. Love to see those. And I'll definitely get in the comments as well and respond to every single comment. But next week, Thursday, before we air, we're actually going to go on Talkback Tuesday on our Instagram page. So if you're not following us at
at Jam the Hype on Instagram. Tune in Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific. We're going to get a Talkback Tuesday. Love to hear your feedback and talk to you through this whole process. And if you would like to hop into this process with us, this journey of discovering ourselves as an artist, being connected with the creator to become better creators, make sure we want to invite you to become a part of the Jam the Hype Artist Development Group, formerly known as the Jam the Hype Society, but really is an artist development group full of artists that want to help each other to be able to have that accountability, that encouragement, to not be those crazy makers, but to be a place where we can safely belong and be ourselves and to create and to push one another along. So shoot me an email, jamthehype@uiwi.org. I'll link it in the description down below as well. We'd love to see you a part of that group. But until next week, we'll see y'all then. Peace.